October. Yeah, so we are 1/10 of the way through this year, 2 months left, and hopefully we will not have any more hurricanes, and the season is not up for another 30, actually 40 some odd days now. So we've got a little ways to go, but again, glad to see everybody's here and healthy. And I know we're missing Mr. Now, but we've got a quorum, so we will go ahead and get started with our October meeting. I will officially call this meeting to order and ask council if there are any adjustments to the agenda. Staff, any adjustments?
No, sir.
Okay. With that, we will move on through with general business. Start with Mr. Harris.
Okay, I have a couple of things. First of all, thank Lynn. I had one of the citizens over on Georgia Street had questions about Brookside, and she looked up the answer and gave me stuff that I go back and respond to it again. Everything's going like it should be. And then the other ones is, I know somebody got the note from Paul Bryant, and the articles in the paper yesterday, Sunday paper, and then Thursday, I guess, the Tribune. And because of some things that I don't believe is true in there, we're going to get eat up on, I want to be answered. So I want to ask our attorney, is a moratorium on residential developments legal or not?
You can have a moratorium that's very, for a specified period of time.
And for specific reasons also, correct?
Yeah, mostly it's to like redo your ordinance.
Because this guy, and because I know we'll be getting calls, and stuff, and he had quoted this statute, 160D-107, said it allows you to have, it's instituted a moratorium. Then he went saying that Cornelius had one. It makes it sound like they're doing it now. As I talked to Lynn, that was in 2017 before they updated the statute, which
Correct.
doesn't, she was thinking doesn't really allow residential moratorium.
The first line of the statute does say except for residential
Yes, sir.
development, so.
And I just wanted to
Clearly
make sure
says
I
that,
hear,
except for residential.
because this stuff here you're reading, and it's kind of a stretch of the truth. There's like a whole lot of things in there that we go, people, why are we doing, can't do this? And I always tell them you can't do it. You know.
Well, that's the advantage to somebody having an opinion, that they can say something they're not liable for. And the bad thing to it, it does, as you said, incite citizens to then accuse us of why we as a town are not doing this and why we're not doing that, when that article's got a lot of issues with it.
Yeah.
And for somebody that's supposed to be in the legal profession, you would think they would be able to document and prepare a little better. But you're right, it causes us a lot of grief.
And of course-
Had several phone calls.
And I was telling Lynn, the last part of it is kind of told how they need to get rid of all of us. You know, the Mooresville and Troutman and the county, the elected officials to get new people. So it kind of ends up with this thing, you know, I said, well, he's the one that ended up dropping out from the last race in the county commission, so that's probably a lot more to do with it. But, anyhow, I just wanted to hear that so that when it comes out there, and why are you not doing it? And I say, it's legal. He said, I read it in the paper. Well, it's not necessarily, it's an opinion page.
That's that old saying, just because it's on the internet, a lot of people thinks it's true, when there's a lot more work, and as Gary said, from the legal standpoint, and as Lynn pointed out, when the statute clearly says accept this,
Yeah.
there's still other things that you can do, but thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, because I just said, I just want to get that, but I cut it out, and then I saw that note from Paul, so he's already sent it to everybody, and of course, he said how to go, basically true statements, which is really, it's a stretch of the truth.
Yes, sir.
And
Mayor, I'm sorry, before you continue, do y'all want to adopt the agenda? No, there wasn't a motion there.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. I was gonna try to wait till Mr. Harris got done, but
Okay.
oh,
yeah, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
can we do it now? And now we have Mr. Now-Hill, so we'll have full council, no problem. Council, if there are no adjustments to the agenda, which I heard none, unless Mr. Now has some.
No, sir. No,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
None from staff. I'll accept the motion to accept our agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Motion is made, receive a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. All apologize for interrupting your.
I just had one more thing.
flow.
You gotta start over.
But it was like, I don't know why it popped up there, when I was looking through my folder
That's why I'm sitting
yesterday.
next to you, Don.
But this was on the roads that through town. And those back then, this one here, well, I had to have in my file, said construction began summer 2023, and now we're at 30, is that right?
29.
Is it, well, it said they were doing, start acquisition 21, summer construction 23. And there's the one that I think it's even changed what it looks like. But,
Yes,
I'm just curious, I haven't seen that, I wanted to say, is it still 30, but you said it's 29, so we're a year better.
that's what the last correspondence we have. Have you had any update that's different than that, Andrew?
Basically, the engineering is 29, and anything beyond that is unfunded.
That's even worse. And that was the part, I guess, made me look and think about that. I just happened to see that yesterday at the house, but, or the day before. Because this guy talking about, roads and stuff, though, well, really, you could have more trouble. We wait, they put that road through here, we'd be forever.
And also to add just commentary to what Andrew said, even back when they give us these other plans, it was never funded. And then DOT, of course, spent a whole lot more funds than they had, which is what slowed everything else down and kicked it off. As the mayor and I had recent discussions with some folks out of Raleigh, there is interest in some, I guess the best word I could use is reconfiguration of how DOT is doing certain projects and doing those. So we, just like they postponed it, we hope that they can then come in and expedite. I'll use Mooresville as an example. Even though they postponed part of the project that's being built out there, they still release some other funds to come in and start doing some right-of-ways, purchase and cleaning up of businesses, because you don't want your town looking like a bomb went off, so to speak, using one of our friends' analogies, and these businesses being vacant, because it makes it look like the area is suffering economically when it's not. So DOT has at least stepped up and acknowledged the issue on 150, and they are working to improve that. And we can only hope they'll do the same thing for our town in the near future.
It sounds like we need to plan a trip to Raleigh early next year, start meeting with people with DOT.
We definitely have some trips scheduled, got the mayor's blessings, and as the calendar comes out, the entire council will be invited at different times to do just that, yes.
All right.
I'm gonna hop over to Ms. Harris.
First, I was glad to see Tally Street on the agenda. I'm always asking about Tally Street, so I was glad to see that on the agenda for today. Glad to talk about that and hopefully update some citizens. Ms. Stark is ready for some updates on Tally Street. One other thing, when I was interviewed to be appointed to this position a couple of years ago, I had mentioned something about an urgent care, and Ron and I talked about this the other day, that I would love to see an urgent care, and now that Davis is closing and turning into something else, that's what Ron and I were talking about. It would be great for us really to have something here in our town. Of course, it can't have, it's not gonna come out of this right here, but I just wanted on record again that that would be something great for our town to have, so we won't have to, go and wait 6 hours at Iredell or run down to Mooresville. But I would love to see an urgent care in our town. The last thing is, this is kind of a little bit comical, but probably a few years ago, people didn't even know what Troutman was. When I went to college, I went to Western Carolina, and people would say, "Where are you from?" I would say, "Troutman." They said, "Where is that? Do you know what Statesville is?" They say, "No." I said, "Charlotte, I'm from Charlotte." Because people didn't know what it was. And now it's just good to be, around and hear Troutman, from so many people. I've heard of Troutman, not necessarily for the rapper or whoever, but people know what Troutman is. I know we have a lot of people moving here. We have some interesting commentary about people moving here, but it's just so good to hear. It makes me very much more proud of being born and raised here in Troutman. So I just had to end it with something mushy.
All right, thank you. I'll hop over to Mr. Oxford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. was able to, in the past week, actually able to attend a couple community events. One that was put on by a local civic group. Ruhrtown had their spaghetti dinner, which from what I could see was a big success, hosted at the fire department. I was very excited to be a part of that. Great group, great event. And also attended the homecoming, which was here at South Iredell, which was a good experience. But it was great to see. I haven't had the chance to go to many games at South. It's actually only the second one I've been to since I moved here. But I can't say it really took me back. I can say that I went to a high school that definitely had a better band than football team. So I'm familiar with what went down that night. But to see the turnout from the community, to see the engagement from the student body, just really, really took me back. It's a great environment out there, and it was really a good time. Even my wife, who's not the biggest football fan, had a great time, had a really great time. So kudos to all involved in both of those events. Also, before I forget, I can't tell you the exact date, but I did receive a robocall from the town regarding a water main break. And I can say once I answered the phone and identified what it was, I cringed on what may come out. But that's actually as I talked to a town manager earlier, it was phenomenal. It gave exactly what I needed to know, gave the information that I needed, provided me options to contact people on multiple levels. And not only that, it felt local, right? It didn't feel like a robocall. You know, it didn't say, you know, it was just well put together, well done, and so I commend all involved that helped put that together as well. I think that's a very good service, and as long as it keeps operating the way that I got it, I think we got a good thing going there. So, and that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Now?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and excuse me, sorry I was late. I was trying to get a coffee, and my experience was not very good customer service-wise. My question is regarding food trucks with our ordinances. I kind of was led to believe, and sometimes when you're led to believe, that's not exactly what the real answer is, that food trucks can only stay in one location for one day, and then they must move. Is that the truth, or is that what the ordinance reads?
Part of the truth, yes.
Okay, well, we have, not numerous, but we have some food trucks that keep coming back to the same spot every day. So is not breaking the ordinance?
Well, they have to move from that spot, but that doesn't mean they can't go back to that spot. If they have we have a permit for, it's I'm gonna say a transient merchant license, which they have to get once a year. Food trucks, we have also that want to set up in the same location and not move. So they want to spend a whole weekend at the fairgrounds or across the street at the coffee place, then they have to get a temporary use permit to do that. But if they're truly moving from location to location, or if they are, the way the ordinance is currently written, it's sort of a loophole, that if they pull up to that location and then get in that truck and drive it home at night and bring it back the next day, they're not in violation of our food truck ordinance.
So the question is, why wouldn't we do something to remove that loophole? So the same truck cannot park at the same place every day? Because are we getting any tax or revenue besides the permit? Are we getting any tax into the town by these food trucks? And I know that answer. It's no, because I'm not paying tax when I go to a food truck. So why are we catering to the food trucks when we have restaurants that are paying property taxes, sales taxes, and other expenses to the town?
I agree with you. These food trucks do pay sales tax also. They're supposed to file with their normal paperwork, so we would get their sales tax. But as far as a property tax,
No.
we're not. And as far as the brick and mortars, the Mayor Pro Tem can help me. I'm aware that this has been discussed at least twice previously, and it winds up being somewhat debatable just for the things that you brought up. We have our brick and mortar businesses that of course feel like they have a lot more invested in business in the town, whether it be a coffee shop or whether it be a food place. If they have brick and mortar places, there's a lot more cost than if you have the truck. Now, in fairness, these trucks are not inexpensive anymore, but the town, to your point, is not collecting property taxes on that, but it's not brick and mortar. It has been asked, and there's not been direction from council for us to close loopholes. We have a certain percentage of residents that like the ability to go and hit these food trucks, but we had one, for instance, without getting into all the particulars, this crew set up and did hot dogs at the car wash, if y'all remember that. And we had a lot of complaints because they didn't like that fact. It was not a truck, it was a cart, yes, which still was health department inspected, but it was a cart, and that kind of falls under our ordinances too. But if you all prefer, we certainly can look at language that one, closes the ability to return daily to the same spot. But I also thought we at one point tried to do something that basically said these licenses were, to be a food vendor, we had a couple options. Like if, for example, if we had a parade and somebody showed up and applied and got a permit, they could do the one event or two events or three events a year, and they paid a fee for that. But if they were going to be a regular, then the fee was supposed to be a whole lot more, so that it would take care of some of the offset of property taxes, not all of them. But I cannot find record. Lynn and I have talked about it, and I can't find a record to where that ever came to fruition. And maybe one of you gentlemen can help remind me of what happened there. But
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, there's been numerous conversations on it, and I think, I don't know what the last revision of it was, but the goal here was to try to protect some of what you talked about in terms of brick and mortar. I think there's also the fact that some of the brick and mortar also have food trucks. So you also need to think about how do we not overcharge them as well. But I think it's worth looking into. And I have heard, I think as Ron said, from some citizens, they like to have that variety. I think what we have attempted to do is to look at both. It's probably the first time it's come up in a couple of years in terms of, you know, the food truck showing up, picking up, and then coming back. At that time, we were more looking at some of the food trucks who were coming and staying, right, without any permit, without any connection to the town, and they were even outside, so they really had no connection. So we were trying to address that issue, but definitely something that we, you know, could look into. And again, I would be cautious, you know, how we craft it to make sure that we don't both penalize a, you know, current restaurant that says, hey, I also want to have a food truck. You know, they've got a brick and mortar here, but they want to be at the fairground or something like that, or what have you, somewhere else, another part of town. So again, worth the further look.
Just a quick question. Eddie, I know I'm not here during the daytime, so I don't see all the food trucks. Besides Tony Taco, what other ones are out there? What other food trucks are here in Troutman?
Basically, it's the Tony Tacos.
Doesn't he own?
He does not own that Mexican
He does,
restaurant.
okay.
So I think there's a lot of confusion that he owns that. He works there, runs it.
Oh, he works there and runs.
Runs it.
That was the reason given before, because they thought the owner still owned, and maybe he did at the time,
See,
before.
that's the big problem.
Yeah, and I agree with Larry 100%. I think, Gary, and we can read it all this, but I'm thinking we did put an exception there. Brick and mortars could allow food trucks because they were paying
Correct.
property. But just kind of capsulizing or following up on what the mayor said, what we passed, and I know you maybe think it's a little loose, but several years ago when we did come up with what we came up with was the best we could at the time. There was a lot of dissension. I say a lot of dissension, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but everybody had their own idea of how we wanted to regulate these things. And the fact that they could, move their truck, go home, come back the next day and stay in the same spot, I wasn't necessarily in favor of that, but some others were. So I guess what I'm saying is that at that time, that's one of the things, and as well as other things, that we could agree on enough to pass the ordinance. But now, if it's time after 2 or 3 or 4 years, however long it's been, I'm certainly willing to go back and look at it. And if, the council now decides it needs to be tightened up, that's fine. Or if it's fine the way it is, after we want to study it. But again, that's kind of to give you a little history on that. Everybody, we did have a lot of different opinions on that and how to handle certain situations, because there are. Another one was, if a church had a fundraiser and they invited food trucks to come in, that one-time fundraiser, maybe every 6 months or a year or something, what do you do? Have a lot of these what-ifs, but again, I'm leading up saying that another reason for us to go back, and maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that was a legitimate concern, maybe it's not so much now. So, to the current council. So, if you feel it's something loose, I would suggest that perhaps the town manager or Kim or somebody forward us a copy of the current food truck, regulation we have, look it over, and if there are things that, we think we can tighten up on, then we come up with a proposed, redo of that ordinance for now. It covers now, and as I say, it would be more in line with this current council's thinking than one that was several years ago.
Well, one of the other things, besides the taco place, is we have a brick and mortar ice cream place on the corner here, right up the street. 500 feet away, parked in Randy's property, is an ice cream trailer. My question though is that fair? And it didn't just come for one day. It stayed maybe a week, maybe even longer, okay? Is that fair to the brick and mortar store that's within our town, that's paying property taxes, sales tax, and whatever? Is that fair?
Yeah.
I don't see that being fair, 500 feet away.
And the two scenarios I'd see, and obviously it's, if it were a truck owned by Randy's restaurant.
It wasn't.
That's what I'm saying, but I'm saying if, that's one scenario. The other one is if, it's not owned by Randy's, but he had some sort of deal with them, then that's not necessarily fair. If it's owned by the business, is the way the ordinance, as I remember it, was written, if it's owned by a brick and mortar in this town, then it's accepted, so to speak. If it's not, even though they may have a contract or a deal with this food truck or cart or what have you to come in, then not necessarily it needs to get a permit. So that's something that, again, we look at, and if that's not in there, it should be tightened up. But and make clear to brick and mortars that if you own it, okay, but if you don't own it, you just can't contract, and it'd be in competition, with a, like you say, in this case, an ice cream brick and mortar store that's here in town.
Right. And when I'm bringing it up is I'm not looking to crucify the people coming in for a church carnival or a town event. It's the same food truck that's there day in and day out or weeks.
Right.
And if it's not too hard, and is it possible for next month's meeting that we could get a report on sales tax income that we receive as a town from these food trucks?
No, I can't generate that information to you. The way their sales tax is paid, it goes into a lump sum to the state, and then the state disperses it to the county, and then the county gives a percentage back, and they don't tell us, we got $300 from ABC business or $700 from this. It's the way the funds are broke down, they don't tell us this is the percentage we're getting back because so-and-so paid it. I can't procure that information.
So who then, does the state follow up that food truck is charging taxes?
They're supposed to, that's correct.
The key word again, sir, is supposed to.
I agree with you.
We can't get infrastructure, roads, because I'm not saying that's gonna help build the roads, but do we really believe that someone is knocking on the food vendor's truck saying, are you charging sales tax?
I agree with your analogy.
We know a restaurant that's in the town of Troutman is definitely charging sales tax, because when we go, we pay the sales tax. And then someone is following up from the state to make sure the brick and mortar place is paying the sales tax. I'm just saying, I don't personally, that it's fair to our brick and mortar restaurants and stores that are doing the right thing.
Well, you're correct, yes, and that was the thought behind, excuse me, Mayor, I'll shut in just a minute. That was the thought behind what we came up with several years ago, even though it may need tweaking now again. But that was the thought, it just was not fair. In fact, we had one or two restaurant owners to come and speak to us at the time, you know, in relation to discussing that proposed ordinance before we passed it. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
No, he pretty much said what I said. I don't think anybody on the council, that's why we made an update to the ordinance, is to try to protect the current brick and mortar. And so, again, as I said, if that's something we can, you know, revisit, we should.
We certainly can do, as Mayor Pro Tem said, send out I'm sorry if it wasn't Mayor Pro Tem, it may have been Councilman now, but we certainly can send out the current ordinance for everybody on council to see, and then we can look at a couple other surrounding towns and cities and see what their ordinance is, and just see if there's something that staff can recommend as ways of tightening it up to accomplish the end goal.
I like that you're gonna include surrounding, because I think, especially if we're looking to, I know we definitely wanna support what we have here, right, but we have a dearth of options here, right? So if we're gonna bring somebody up north up here, I don't think we need to completely change the game on them when it's like, well, I'm in Mooresville 4 times a year, and I'm in Statesville 4 times a year, but when I wanna come to Troutman, everything's completely different. You know, so I think some kind of consistency with the area, if not, a little bit better to, you know, kind of grease the wheel, you know, to try to drive the economy here. But that was my only comment. You know, the surrounding areas is what I would like to see as well.
Anything else?
And, yeah, just one other question, I just kind of want to just get a little update. Do we currently have a code enforcement officer besides our one that we're representing?
I have him here to be introduced this evening.
Thank you. Well, my answer, I just was wondering if we still had Mr. Gaines, or we had our own.
We both.
Currently, if I'm allowed to speak,
No.
currently, me and Mr. Gaines are working together, and he's still taking charge of like the housing.
Come on up here so that it gets this,
Sorry.
introduce you, it's all right, it's your first meeting. Introduce yourself to everybody in council.
I'm Shane Harris, and
Another Harris.
Oh, you're Harris?
another Harris, yes.
Oh,
All I can say is unofficially, I got a message, if it was a Harris, it was okay.
I might say that we might have to go into a closed session. Performance conversation. All right.
But yes.
Yeah, his interview was real short, I'm a Harris, okay.
Mr. Gaines is he's still in charge of kind of like the housing part of the ordinances, and I've taken over more of like the nuisance, motor vehicle, junk vehicle type part of it, until I can be further trained into the housing, and then I'll eventually take over all of it.
And in addition to what Shane just said, Lynn and I spoke, along with Adam Lippard, we have like driveways and some other things like that had been subbed out to our engineer consultants, and we felt like it needed to be, because of the historical issues that's happened, and we've all heard about them. Well, this neighborhood didn't get this and that neighborhood didn't get that. We want to control our destiny, so to speak, better, and he actually will be performing those inspections as well.
Yes.
Any other questions of Shane?
I don't, but that answers all my questions there.
Welcome, Mr. Harris.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I'm from Statesville, born and raised, so I'm familiar with Troutman. I'm still learning all the back roads and
Go
everything.
ahead and tell the mayor where you just quit.
Oh yeah, I was currently working at Food Line.
Oh, okay. So you're still an employee. We're really gonna have a conversation. Go ahead.
Which I love working at Food Line, by the way. But this opportunity came, and so I was going to try my hand at something new, and so far I really like it a lot. So
Today, I went to Food Line for lunch for some things. The staff, we all had pizza soup. And I had to go pick up some things, and some of his former coworkers called me a thief and a couple other things. But they spoke highly of Shane, of course, which is why we hired him. But oh yeah, that was some of the nicer things I've been called lately. Thief was what they come up with, is still in their employ.
Okay. Welcome.
yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the only other, if I may piggyback on to what George said, there was also a comment made that our infrastructure is in crisis and, or is headed towards crisis. And I'd like to hear something from somebody concerning that.
I'm sorry Adam is not here to help me address that. That again is rhetoric that is on other social media and forums that's not accurate. We as every town and every city here occasionally have a break. That's just parts break. Look at your own vehicles. Some of you all have had one 200,000 miles, never an issue. Some of us, if it's like my luck, can have one that it's back 3 or 4 times under warranty because it's breaking. So just because you have brand new does not mean that it's going to perform and function as it should without any issues. We have been working diligently, as you all know, and for public consumption that may be watching the videos, we have invested a lot of time and money in trying to get funding to upgrade some of the systems that we felt needed to be upgraded. And if there's one thing that I could point out that says it's not ideal, is we have so many pump stations around town. Some of them were developer built and paid for in the agreements over the years, but they worked fine for that system, but then the town adopted them once it got to a certain point, and we have a very of a different equipment of who built that one as compared to this one. And again, that's why we are trying to change going forward, that the town builds its infrastructure instead of relying on a developer to come in. We'll build it and then we'll turn it over to you, and then we'll get our fees back as we do taps and things of that nature. That's also a standard way that towns and cities do business, but we feel like if we do our own work, it's overseen by our people, then we have a better chance of getting quality-like product that we have throughout the town. There's been comments that, well, there's water pipes or sewer pipes that staff don't even know about. Well, that's an ideal system, is that you do have water pipes and sewer pipes that people don't know about, because that means they're functioning the way they're supposed to. Our councilman Eddie now is from New York City, or at least worked there for a while. They still have wooden infrastructure that's over 100 years old. So just because something is aged does not mean that we have to go and change it as long as it's functioning properly. But back to what I was saying, our goal and our plans is that we have presented to you all in a couple different workshops is to get away from these pump stations and try to go with a gravity flow system wherever we can, as much as we can. The one project that we went to Iredell County specifically asking for ARP funds for, that they denied on a couple different occasions, even though they promised us 2 or 3 times they would do something, that would have gotten rid of 6 pump stations and then become a gravity flow system, which is ideal. But we are constantly asking for various sources to fund and to rebuild some of these things just like that. If we can go to gravity flow and take pump stations offline, that protects our citizens going forward. But to the exact quote that we have a failing infrastructure, that's completely bogus and 100% wrong.
So we're not either heading towards a crisis stage or in a crisis stage with our infrastructure right now, as we understand it right now.
We are not in crisis, we're not heading toward a crisis. A lot of folks hear one sentence out of a whole chapter of a book and then put 3 or 4 sentences together and make their own story. Again, just because we have breaks, just because we have repairs, does not mean that we have a failing or crisis situation. We are certainly, when people say they're not planning for the future, well, that's the contracts that we have had previous were what I would call short-term, looking for 10 and 15-year concerns. And those are being renegotiated with our partners that we do business with. I will go back even further and say at some point in time, and Mayor Pro Tem, you remember a couple of these conversations, the state and federal governments at different times offered this town money to have their own water system, and people chose not to do that. At the time, it would have been very expensive. I cannot criticize those people for the immediate thought that they had. I was not involved with it. None of us here were. But they chose not to do that. We did have our own wastewater system. We were constantly fined because it was not being taken care of and managed properly. And Diener come in and said, we recommend highly that you go somewhere else. Gary and I have done some research and are in the process of trying to do research, because once you grow to a certain point, it absolutely makes sense that you have your own system and you control your own system. The problem is, 24 years ago, when we had that choice to make, it was very expensive, and because of the amount of citizens we had at the time, the choice was made to then go as a tenant to somebody else's system, which theoretically from the state made things cheaper for both. That's not what happened in reality, but the town went that course because they was trying to protect its taxpayers at the time. It still was costly, it went up, and it's kind of one of those, we're danged if we do, we're danged if we don't. To maintain the system that we have a certain percentage out there that wants to criticize us for having the highest water rate in the state. Well, that's definitely not accurate. We don't have the highest water rate in the state, but there were several years we certainly was one of the highest in this area. But that also has shifted. We had somebody comment not long ago, well, so-and-so gets water over here and their water bill is only $25 a month. You all are charging me $75. Okay, is so-and-so over there on the septic system? No. Is so-and-so over there getting their leaf and limb picked up and recycles? No. Our bill encompasses all of that. So when you add all the other things to it, that conversation gets diluted in a hurry as to what we're really charging and what all services that we offer in return. But yes, to reiterate your question, we are not in a crisis situation. We're planning for 25 and 40 years down the road, not just for our immediate needs of what we have here.
Just trying to think, I think most of this has been the game, Friday night, hated the score, but loved everything else. I did not make the spaghetti. I had heard about it and thought I'd make it, but I didn't. Sorry, I'm glad it was a good turnout though. And you know, what I know of the Ruritan Club in other areas, it's a good organization. Certainly welcome it to Troutman. And at this point in time, I think I've covered everything. Certainly everybody else has, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. So just a couple of things, and the last thing you mentioned, this idea of the band being better than the team. I want to clarify that's for that particular game.
That's not what I implied for the school. I was just letting you know my high school experience far away.
Not a bad team, and Yeah, and they may have had a bad game. I appreciate the signage on the Greenway. It looks really good. And so, those banners that we purchased still have good life and they look good for the fall. So, I really enjoyed seeing those up. Question on the, I'll stay with your comment. As I watch what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi with their water main issues, it's truly concerning. I don't, and I fully agree with the manager, don't believe we're anywhere near that. And so for those citizens who might have that same concern or folks who might be putting that out there, I know our Public Works team has done a great job in all the years that I've been here, and no real concerns. And you know, the grading system that we have from you know, our environmental regulators really gives us grade A in what we do. And so again, I appreciate what they do every day to ensure that we continue to have good, clean water. Now, you know, whether or not that's a bigger issue for the state, I would say, you know, that's a different conversation. But I think we're doing everything we can, and we should continue to do to make sure that our systems are up to speed. So, again, I appreciate you bringing that up. A point that Ms. Harris, I was in Washington, D.C. the other day, and of course, I think people clearly know where Troutman is, but we do have a couple of well-known residents here that usually comes up in that conversation at some point in time. But again, it's great to continue to have growth in our town and people who appreciate, who stopped here and continue to you know, want to hear good stuff about our town. Question on Autumn Leaf, I got this question the other day. Something that I think has started to happen in the Raleigh area, where some of the streets have, where there's a, you know, pretty sharp turn, and Autumn Leaf being one of those where they put up these more signage telling people about the turn. So as that development continues to happen, is that something we can ask DOT to maybe put up some additional signage, particularly on the 2 or 3 curves that are there from a safety perspective, to make sure people know those curves are there. And again, I saw it after somebody brought it up to me when I was in Raleigh this past week, but some of it's more flashing and some of it's not, but some of it's clearly just that sharp curve signage that gives people some visibility to those curves being there. The other piece was, is it possible, and I don't know if this is something that we've done in the past, but providing a link to either CRTPO or a link to some of the road information in terms of the date. So we've heard some of the date changes even here tonight, you know, what that looks like. But to be able to put that visibility on the website when those dates are, as they change, you know, again, the major intersections, if you will, what those dates might look like. So, and again, it's kind of a moving target, and I get it, but maybe that's something we can just be able to put out there and refer citizens if you want to know when this intersection is currently slated. That's the date for them. And I think that's all I have. I would say appreciate Councilman Harris bringing up the urgent care. I think that's been a conversation for some of the projects that are coming online for us to add medical assistance and healthcare to those. And so hopefully, as you continue to bring that up, maybe that's also an opportunity we can share with some of our development community we'd like to see in our community.
I have one more thing. Last October 1st, we lost a child from our community, Crystal Moore, lost her son. He was a student at UNCW, and I was glad to see town manager yesterday speaking on behalf of his coaches that he had. So thank you for being there to speak on. It was he was lost his friend, very upset, but it was just good to see all the support that that her family had there on yesterday. But yesterday.
So with that, I'll turn it over to town manager for comments.
I appreciate all of your comments and different conversations we've had. I will pick up with the urgent care. Council Lady Harris and I had talked about, a couple of you and I have had some conversations in the last couple of years, but she and I specifically talked about, there's not a contract yet, and this is certainly not anything meant in a negative toward Iredell Memorial. Iredell Memorial's performing at the rate that they can because of the overwhelming demand for their services. But the ER wait is running 6 to 8 hours at a time for somebody going into the ER. And again, because Davis made a business decision to change from community health to the mental health field, certainly their right to do, it has created a huge void that just simply cannot be repaired and fixed in a real timely manner. The folks doing the Wakefield development are in conversations with someone to do what they hope is basically the most up-to-date urgent care in the county, and that this one would be available 24 hours and not like the other community versions that we've all had to visit or utilize from some time. So our fingers are crossed, and as Council Lady Harris and I spoke about that, I'm hoping that that agreement comes to fruition, and that will be it will not be a hospital, but they will handle a lot of things that people typically are going to the ER for, other than a life-threatening type situation. And as you all said, we've got a whole bunch of different personalities that live here. It's kind of, I won't say comical, because some of them just want to disappear into our community. And a couple of them do on a regular basis, but we've had NASCAR champions, football champions, I don't know what you call those series that everybody watches, the like where they...
Reality.
Yeah, the reality series person that lives here, and they all have blended into our community, and it's neat. Occasionally somebody will snap a picture. Oh, this looks like so-and-so. Well, that was them. So it is definitely good, and as we travel, people are like, oh yeah, that's where so-and-so lives or is happening, and I appreciate that. As to the football game Friday night, as I was leaving, Councilman Oxshire asked me something to the effect of, well, why was I on the field, and he understood who the bad karma was. So
I think jinx was the term.
Yeah, but just for the record, I was there when we won the state championship, so I'm not the jinx. They are celebrating that this Friday, ironically, is the 10th year anniversary of South Iredell winning the state championship. It will be a good time for all of you that can make it to that. The town has helped them promote that event. And I'm also just wanting to say, we've had several interactions, the Parks and Rec, the police, and other staff with South Iredell in the last month, and they've been positive. The homecoming parade, we had some minor inconveniences with folks that live in this immediate area, but it was a brief parade, and people enjoyed and they showed up, and those are the things that go back to kind of like what Councilman Oxshire said. This is what adds to Troutman, of that Friday night football field, but also seeing a homecoming parade, because they may have them elsewhere, but I'm not familiar if they do. I'm tickled that we're able to support the school and do that. The Public Works and Maintenance, to talk about that a little bit briefly, just to give you all kind of notice that we will have more discussions with you all's input. But in part of keeping up with the Public Works side of things, our Public Works Department has kind of been the catch-all, do-all, and then it went to where some staff here was having to help fill in the voids because of so much supply and demand was occurring. Just like our downtown aesthetics, Emily Watson changed all of that within the last couple years of the businesses down there. Public Works didn't come in and was doing certain parts, as we have jokingly, but in reality said, back when the town created the Greenway, it looked nice and everybody was happy about it until it became time to mow it, and they're like, ooh, there was not a plan for that. And that's not been the case with you all, so I'm certainly not throwing a stone at you. I'm just saying we have been playing catch up ever since. Whether that was the Greenway, the expansion of the Greenways, the park system, our population growing with Public Works and Maintenance. There for a while there was a transition going to where they was doing vehicle maintenance and doing certain repairs there. On the surface that sounded logical because they kind of had downtime from time to time. Well, now it's not logical, it's irrational actually to have people that are supposed to be your public works experts, but then you have them out here mowing and then you have them working on a brake job for a patrol car. So going forward, just so you all know, Chief Watson and I have spoke, and he will be going with a local business to get the patrol car fleet all of its maintenance and done there. And we are also looking at the public works side of things. Eventually, as we have a plan together, we've discussed a couple different options already, but as our town grows, we need to split public works and maintenance because they're two different things. Even though they have some overlapping responsibilities, they really should be different. So as we go into budget workshop next year, expect more of that. And as we talk about things, I just want to go ahead and put it on your radar that that's happening. The signage near Autumn Leaf Mare that you talked about reminded me also, and Andrew's getting ready to give a transportation update, so I'm not going to steal too much of that. But we've got signal light work was going today to Tally Road, so that will be coming. There will also be a signal light at Perth and State Park. Even though that's not in our town limits, we have to use that route to get to parts of our town limits. The report that we got that was copied from DOT, that could happen as soon as December. Early spring at the latest is when the light is expected to go at Perth and State Park. Also, going back to Councilman Harris, last month, appreciation for our pedestrian crosswalks. We do have some parents that are very appreciative of those, not only on Wagner Street, but the ones at South Iredale in front of Barium Seasons, that it has helped them be able to use the crosswalks to get access to the school. On Wagner Street, we've had to replace those once already because people just simply are not paying attention. But it's like one of the school faculty said, if our people can't pay attention to turn left, what if that was a child? And these signs, ironically, are small children that would be elementary, the same height. So no, they're not middle school height, or I'm afraid they would really be run over then. But even at where they are, we moved them just a little bit with DOT input to try to make turning better. But we've replaced them twice, but they are working and appear to be effective.
I did notice that I went to Davidson a couple weeks ago, and they must be having the same problem, people hitting because they're like 5 feet past the crosswalk down the road. I mean, they moved it way back.
Oh, yes,
So I
sir.
said, they must be having the same problem there, they've been running over them.
Yes, sir. And the one we have, that's closest, to the middle school, that one, we are limited as to how far we can move it, otherwise it'll move the sight line that just
Yeah,
would
it's-
make it, but
They're
we,
pretty gonna move back there.
yes, sir.
Like those other people seem to have the same issues.
Yes, sir. We have also spoke to the state, to the mayor's comments. Some of these signs in other areas have flashing lights and different things. We asked DOT about that, especially for our crosswalks, and they did not grant us permission to do that there. Plus, and even us evaluating with the chief and Adam Lippert, of maybe putting signs on the side of the street, and making them lights oriented. There's just not proper room there with the side alignment that you get from traffic north and south for that to occur. But we did look at that option. That's all I have at this point. Was going to introduce Shane, but we got that handled. And if you all are good, the next thing we have on the agenda is the transportation update. And we have Andrew here to proceed with it.
Manager, can I ask one thing before?
Yes.
Andrew, you gave us a rough timeline on one of the traffic signals. What about the one here at Tally Street and Main Street?
They're working on it today. They're expecting within 45 days, completed project.
Okay, 45, all right, okay, thank you.
That's all I'm out there today, I think.
Ma'am,
I think that's all
They're
I'm out
out
there
there
today.
now.
working.
they were, and I will also.
Is that what that digging was there in front of Western Auto?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay,
in front of the
Okay.
Yeah,
office.
where's Sonata?
okay.
That's a throwback.
Went way back, where's
I mean,
Sonata?
advance, excuse me. Boy, I do go back, don't
I
I?
remember.
Lord
I
have
don't know if
mercy.
I remember.
Maybe you wanna buy a bicycle.
Oh, well, I just told my age, Western Auto. You know, when I said that, I said, that don't sound right. I stuck with it anyhow.
So weird.
Thank you for bringing that up.
We're no better, we know what to do.
Yes, sir.
Anyhow.
Yes, sir.
What's the timeline when we're gonna switch to the private vendor for doing our maintenance on our vehicles?
It's already in place.
It's already happening,
Yes. For the police,
and it's an in-town vendor?
it is.
Thank
Warranty work would still go back
Right.
to
Whoever.
manufacturer, of course. But
But
the
brake jobs or
brake jobs, normal maintenance will go.
oil changes, it's
to-
gonna go to our outside vendor.
And-
For all our vehicles?
No, sir. Our trucks, in Public Works will still be done through Public
But our
Works.
police cars are gonna go to the outside vendor.
Correct. And like I say, just to reiterate, all warranty work will go back to manufacturers, and periodically, we need to verify that there are not any recalls or any issues with those. So we will check with the manufacturer of whatever vehicle. I would like to also state, since we're talking about vehicles, Gov Deals happened again, and we sold one 2016 model truck, and just for the record, it only had 40-some thousand miles. Well, we had some people asking, not any of you all, because we've been over this with other equipment, but we had a couple citizens reach out and say, oh my gosh, why would you all sell a truck with that many miles? It's crazy. Well, in 2016, we paid $26,000 and some odd dollars for the truck, and last week we sold it for $24,400. That's why we would do that. It's no longer in warranty. We've already started to have to spend money on it, and as you all know, and to reiterate, our vehicle policies are such that how much is it's costing us to keep them on the road, not a specific miles. So if a vehicle starts to cost us money, it's time to get rid of it normally. The new trucks that we purchased were only $34,000. The new Dodges that we purchased last year were $24,000 and some odd dollars. So just in 1 year, there's been a significant increase in the vehicles. But again, we get a brand new vehicle with a warranty and no issues on that. And that's why it made sense to go ahead and list that one for sale and sell it. The other one had 160-some thousand, you remember? Miles on it, 2013 model. It brought a little over $10,000. the two-wheel drive Tahoe that we had, that was a seized vehicle from narcotics, was used as a narcotics, and then we used it for the last little while as an admin vehicle. It brought $5,300 is what it brought, and it had 170-some thousand miles on it. So we definitely got rid of vehicles that needed to go fleet-wise, but I caution you all, and we will discuss here shortly with Chief Watson, we have to, the vehicle accessibility and inventory, that is a crisis, and that's not anything that we created. And we are so fortunate so far that we've not had those incidents, other than the one this year when a patrol officer was hit in the rear and total lost the vehicle. We were very fortunate that luck was on our side, and we got a new patrol vehicle thereafter. So we had ordered F-150s a couple years, a little over a year ago, and then we was told, nope, they're not coming. Well, we got told recently, yes, they are coming, and here's your VIN numbers. So we're tickled for that, but as we try to hire officers and have a full staff, these vehicles are important that we have them here, and that if we can rotate them out. A couple of the older ones that we have now, for example, the Chevrolet Tahoes, have a lot of miles on them. But at the time, within the last 3 and 4 years, one engine was completely replaced, and then the top end of another engine was rebuilt. Well, to get the longevity and service out of them, those were wise decisions to be made at the time with the budget. But we are still not trying to get rid of those vehicles just yet. Do you all have any other questions on them? Andrew? Mr. Mayor, if you're ready for the
Yep, I think we're good.
transportation update?
Okay, well, thank you. I hope you're all doing well tonight. I'm touching base on projects that the town administers that I say we have control over, but at least a semblance of control over, because you'll notice a common theme regarding the status of these projects. And I'll start off with Councilwoman Harris's favorite project, the Downtown Sidewalk project, and I'll give a brief history and then kind of an update where we're at with it. This project, it's actually 3 segments of sidewalk. The most talked about is obviously Talley Street from West Ave up to Main Street, but it also is a portion of Wagner Street from West Ave to Main Street, and also a portion of Rumpel Street from Thomas Street up to Main Street. This was approved to the town for funding in 2017, with the town providing a 38% match. Town finally got approval to move forward with this project in 2021 in the fall, so it's been about a year. We've selected the consultant Ramey Kemp to do the design of the project. The cost estimate for the design was approved September 7th of this year. So it's taken almost a year from the time that we actually got the project off the ground to get that approval for the contract and cost estimate for the design. I should say just the cost estimate. The contract is still being reviewed by NCDOT. It was submitted on August 3rd. However, which is not on my little paper I've submitted, I got off the phone this afternoon with the consultant that's working for NCDOT Division 12, who's short-staffed. They got off the phone with somebody in Raleigh this afternoon. Apologize that we haven't heard anything within about 2 months, so I appreciate that. But we should be getting a call from Raleigh or a letter from Raleigh saying that the actual the contract for the design with Ramey Kemp is approved. What this does is it gives Ramey Kemp and the town a legal agreement so Ramey Kemp can go and start the process of designing the sidewalks. Now, with these projects, there's 3 stages. There's your design phase. Once that project's designed, then you got to, ideally, you don't have to acquire any right-of-way. The sidewalk will be totally in a public right-of-way, but we know in the real world that's never going to be the case. So once we get the project designed, we can start right-of-way phase for any property owners that we may have to acquire right-of-way from. That takes a little while to get negotiations, contracts, legal work. It'll just take a little while. You're looking at probably another year. And then once the right-of-way, the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, once that's completed, we can go ahead with the construction of the project. So step 1 is almost ready to start. So I I know it's a long contract, it's been a while, but these are federal funds that are administered by the NCDOT that are then given to the town. So there is a lot of eyes that are on these contracts, a lot of red tape to go through, but we're moving in the right direction. The second one is kind of hand in hand with.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
that, or do you want to go to?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Just a quick question. I'm geographically challenged. If it wasn't for GPS, I wouldn't have found my way here tonight.
Sure.
Could you, but I was just looking through the map here on the, so what about, is there already, or maybe is there a plan for a sidewalk on West from Tally to Wagner?
We don't have a plan for that.
Okay.
I mean, it's something we could look into in the future. Obviously, with having these funds from 2017, let's get these done first.
Absolutely. I just noticed west to west to, I'm like, well, how far is this stretch left?
And you know, West is built out, so it's not something we can hold any developers accountable for. You know, if they come in and do a new development, unfortunately, it's built out, so.
Sure.
So we'll have to look at alternate ways to funding if we get to that point.
Thank you.
The second one, as I mentioned, it's kind of tied with the downtown sidewalk project. This one's the extension of the Greenway, and it's basically from the depot down to Byers Road. And so this one, again, same funding. It was approved in 2017. This one only comes at a 20% match for the town, so it'll cost the town a little bit less. It was approved by NCDOT to move forward on the same timeline, which was fall 2021. This one, Kimley Horn will be doing the design for. We've submitted the cost estimate for the design to NCDOT. It was submitted on July 27th of this year, and it's still under review. So this one's moving a little bit slower with the folks up in Raleigh. But again, I'm hoping this will eventually get approved for the design contract. We can move forward with Kimley Horn, and then we can kind of catch up with the sidewalk project that we have. With that, the same three phases: the design, the right-of-way, and then the construction. And we'll keep you posted on how that one moves forward. Another thing I wanted to touch base on is we do have the Troutman bicycle pedestrian plan. In 2020, the town was awarded a grant through DOT to develop a new bike and ped plan, and this will replace the plan that was adopted in 2008. The consultant for this one is VHB, and they started the development of this plan about a year ago, summer of 2021. The plan is actually completed, and there's a draft that's on the website for review. Again, where we sit with this one right now is a review from the NCDOT Integrated Mobility Division. I had a conversation with them on September 29th. Basically, Troutman is fourth in line for review, and once NCDOT gives the review for this plan, we can go ahead and go to planning board for recommendation and then bring this plan to council to officially adopt it. And one thing I think this will help, just hearing some conversations earlier about crosswalks, and DOT not wanting to be involved with crosswalks. Well, a portion of this plan is to make safety improvements for pedestrians, which improves crosswalks. So if DOT has signed off on a plan that shows improved crosswalks at some of the locations we discussed, when they come back and tell us that we're not gonna have this, we're not gonna do this doesn't make sense, we can say, well, we've got at least a little bit of leverage. It's in a document that they've approved. So, you know, that's something good to look at with this plan. And then the last plan I wanted to touch on is the mobility plan. And if you remember, in July, we were awarded $96,000. And what this is gonna do, it's gonna replace our comprehensive transportation plan, which was in 2009. This one's mainly gonna look at roadways. So, you know, a lot of intersections that we need to look at improving. As we know, with potentially not having this thing funded probably till 2035, we're gonna have to look at alternate ways to get some traffic moving in town. So anyway, this one, again, we've got the scope and the draft and the contract with the consultant. The consultant is RS&H. They're a pretty reputable consultant. Parco has dealt with a lot. We got 4 applications in, and after reviewing them, we thought they hit mainly on what we're looking for in this plan. The other 3 were a lot more on the bike ped side, but we feel we're adopting a bike ped plan, so we're looking more at the roadway segment with this one. The DOT is reviewing this. again, once DOT approves the contract, we can move forward with it. However, I did include the draft contract in the scope on the consent agenda, and for hopefully the council to approve on Thursday night. That way, once DOT does approve it, we can move forward and get this plan started. And the last thing I wanted to touch base on was, in August of this year, staff submitted a comprehensive application to the Division of Public Health for a bike repair station and some bicycle parking racks. And these will be at no cost to the town. Total is about $5,000. And our application was accepted. So tomorrow I'm gonna be driving up to Raleigh to pick up some equipment. And what this is, bicycle parking is basically, you'll see your bicycle racks. So we'll look at places throughout town where we think it makes sense. Maybe one outside here at Town Hall. We've already got one at the park. Maybe one out of the depot, but we can discuss that a little further once we get the infrastructure. And then the bicycle repair station, you see this, there's one at the state park. It's basically, it's just like a mechanism that has some wrenches attached to it. It's got a bike pump on it. So, you know, if you're riding your bike and you have a flat tire or something, you've got some equipment you can work with to repair it. And we're probably gonna put this one down at the park. But those are updates on the transportation-related projects that we've actually got some say in. So I can take any questions on these, or if you have any questions on the other ones that we can just shake our head and pretend like we're happy with, we can do that as well.
Andrew, quick question, actually, to RS and H. Have they worked with any of the towns other than, I mean, closer to us? I know, TRTPO, but.
They've just completed the Iredell County Comprehensive Transportation Plan. And so another benefit with that is that they've done a lot of the legwork throughout the county, because Troutman was involved with the making of that plan. So hopefully that will save them the legwork.
Okay. And there's one bike repair station.
One bike repair station, and it was a little unclear on the award letter. It was something between 2 and 5 different bicycle parking equipment.
Okay. Other questions?
I just want to say thank you for being passionate about these projects, because I know some of them are near and dear to your heart, but as for the residents and the citizens, thank you.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Same.
And while we're talking, I think someone mentioned a while ago, and possibly a good idea, or I think it's a good idea maybe, to at least initially thinking about it, perhaps either reporting it to us at each meeting if the town manager approves, or just sending it to us in email to the council members, the mayor, well, council members, including the mayor. You know, something about these, as you know, because each town had that Lake Norman, you know, the Lake Norman Transportation Commission meeting. You know, they give us the form, the pamphlets, or not pamphlets, but the sheets and so forth. And they'd always include a lot of things, and you can keep us just abreast of these others that are, you know, don't attend those meetings. Just let us know where they stand. I know some is going to be repetitive, because I mean I'm seeing the same thing month after month, but you know, at least if you know, we out of sight, out of mind, you keep those things, keep us aware of them in some way or another on a monthly basis.
And with CARPO, the big topic they're discussing right now is there was an unsolicited bid received for the potential for toll lanes, basically from where the hot lanes end right now, going down to the South Carolina state line. And so it's interesting in the dynamic of the makeup of the CARPO board, because you've got all the towns in Iredell County, all the towns in Mecklenburg County, and then most of the towns in Union County. And just the dynamic of people's opinions, people's thoughts, people's knowledge, what people really know, what people really don't know. It's just an interesting dynamic, and at this point in time, it's still a discussion point, but that's been a topic that's been discussed at the last few meetings.
And there's still a lot of people who are on that end of Mecklenburg who've actually not gone through the hot lanes or seen it work. So yeah, they have very differing opinions at this point.
And in a way, from the staff standpoint, at the TCC meetings, which is staff, it's kind of fun Because being up in Troutman, this has really nothing to do with us, so I can kind of sit back and play devil's advocate on both sides. So, you know, it's a little bit on the entertaining side.
Dance puppets.
But I have no problem giving Carpo updates.
You know, like I say, outside, out of mind, you tend to forget those sort of things over time. Just, that's just kind of a heads up monthly.
All right, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next thing we have is our town attorney had sent out an email as to training or conference that he had in reference to, or something he was reading, I don't remember what originated it, but in reference to combining, most towns, and ours used to be one of those that did, have the planning and zoning board and the board of adjustments as one board. I do think, because we have had at least 2 cancellations of board of adjustments because board members could not show up, and have a quasi judicial meeting, I do think that's something that you all should consider of recombining the boards. Right now, the Board of Adjustment membership is only 5 voting full members and 2 alternates. And all voting seats are filled, but neither of the alternate positions. In order for a board to carry out its duties and responsibilities, it's necessary for members to be in attendance, and a 4/5 vote is required for variances, special use permits, and appeal cases, making it difficult to conduct business if more than one member, or if one member is absent, actually. Recently, a meeting could not be held due to lack of quorum. A special meeting had to be called. This caused the delay of the applicant and additional advertising costs to the town of Troutman. Many neighboring communities have combined both, cutting down the need for additional volunteers and allowing communities to process Board of Adjustment applications efficiently. The frequency of BOA requests received by the town is minimal, making it difficult to recruit and maintain volunteers with a knowledge of that board to serve on the board. Councilman Oxer and I can tell you from our service on that board, some of these cases are absolutely in depth, and having people that are familiar with the process is, to me, an integral part of that as well. And of course, Gary suggested that this may be an option and for us to at least visit it because he was aware of our plight as well. My suggestion would be, and it's totally up to you all, the total numbers that you want to do. If you wanted to reclaim, first of all, if you wanted to cross them together, the way it works in most other municipalities, towns or cities, is the on the date that they would have a planning and zoning board meeting, for example, they would have maybe 2 hours before that, the Board of Adjustment meeting should start. If there's not anything for Board of Adjustment, then that's simple. We put out that notice that there's not one, and then they would show up at the 7 o'clock time and conduct their normal business. So that is how I would recommend, 1, if you decided to reclaim them, 2, just so you know that's kind of the way the schedule would go, or we recommend the schedule go. And then the third part of the equation would be, to me, instead of increasing the numbers, which can be detrimental if you have too many people involved in the same processes, I would think that you would limit the number to be the same amount of number that you have on planning and zoning board, which is sufficient to cover 2. I would suggest that we have all applicants, and Gary would have to steer us as to the legalities, to resubmit. We still have certain appointments that the county would make, even though you all would have a recommendation. The county commissioner still has to approve the ETJ persons, but my recommendation would be that same number be there of whatever it is, and then just have everybody resubmit applications as to serve in a dual purpose. We have not polled either board and asked if a member would be willing to serve both. But I certainly think once we change the dynamics and the responsibilities, I could see one or two people say, no, they don't want to continue on the P and Z side, and or same thing with Board of Adjustments. So we may not have to do anything other than submit the paperwork in Gary's direction, resubmit to the county with an explanation of what the ETJ persons are and what their terms would be. Gary, did I see anything wrong on that you'd like to add?
No, it just so happened we had a BOA meeting recently and it got canceled due to lack of attendance. And I'm representing the town of Davidson's Board of Adjustment on a hearing right now. We're in the 10th hour of a hearing of an appeal of a planning director's decision. But they do, they have their planning board, and I think they may have 10 members of their planning board. And they actually start the planning board meeting at 5, and then they tend to have short planning board meetings, and then they have their Board of Adjustment right after the planning board. The chairman of the Board of Adjustment and the chairman of the planning board is the same person. And then what they do is that they simply rotate their planning board so that everybody doesn't have to serve on the Board of Adjustment each time. And the way they originally did this meeting was they had 7 members of the planning board show up to do the Board of Adjustment meeting. And once they determined nobody had conflicts of interest and that kind of stuff, they then sent 2 home. And so they ended up with just the 5 they needed for the meeting. So it takes some of that burden off. And most Board of Adjustment hearings are very brief, 20, 30 minutes. Unfortunately, I'm now on one that's 10 hours. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, that wasn't convincing when you said that.
Do what?
I said that wasn't too convincing when you said it's a 10-hour meeting, but, or hearing.
It's been 2 nights, so.
Yeah.
And Lynn has had experience in a town that has it, but that's the way they do it. It'd be a relatively easy change of the ordinance.
The rules of procedure would have to be rewritten. I think that's the main thing Gary and I would need to work on.
And I have Davidson's rules of procedure, so.
So if I hear what you're saying, these are 2 separate meetings, but they're held by the same folks, if you will. So the rotation you mentioned was, there are, I guess, 10 people on P and Z, and for every time that they hold a Board of Adjustment meeting, after the P and Z meeting, 5 of them rotate and stay for the meeting.
7 stay, then eventually 2 go home.
Okay. So back down to 5.
Right. And that's what they had a meeting just like this, because I was there with the planning and zoning, and they finished that, and as soon as they finished it, they rearranged the tables, and the BOA went up to the dais and had their meeting.
So one thing you had mentioned about ETJ people, does the Board of Adjustments have the same requirements, or
They do.
they have ETJs and mixed, okay,
Yes, sir.
so we'd be in good shape.
Yes,
But
sir.
isn't that something that needs to be monitored during the rotation?
Yes.
Right, you don't want to have 5 in town just because
Yeah.
there's the 5 that showed up.
You'd write that into your rules of procedure, as to what the makeup of the board was and how many were ETJ and how many. So when we got into those meetings, we would know exactly how to rotate it.
But our P and Z currently meets at 7 p.m., right?
I mean, and I think to Gary's point, our current BOA cases, typically a variance, special use permit case, they don't take as long. An appeal, we probably would have to hold that at a special meeting. But we could even start the meeting at 6 and do the BOA first and then do the P and Z after. We can kind of work through that. And then we'd have to figure that out through advertising. You have to make sure you advertise those times correctly.
Now, the current Board of Adjustment, what you're proposing, all those would need to reapply the positions,
You can-
Still trying to understand the mechanics of this thing.
My
Switch over.
That's my suggestion of both boards. Instead of enlarging the number on planning and zoning, because these meetings are going up to midnight at times with the current makeup. So if you add more people, to me, that just adds more time for more people to have input and talk and banter. So my suggestion, just based off of the way we are doing business currently, is that we combine two boards into one. So for planning and zoning, that would be whatever the current number is, in-town and ETJ residents. And again, if you all choose to proceed with that, there's no guarantee that all of them would want to stay under those circumstances, and just give everybody an opportunity to reapply. But yes, to your point, that may mean that we're now having to choose who's staying and who's not. Because I do think it would be detrimental to increase the size of the P and Z.
Right.
Just because we're combining the boards.
So we're talking a makeover, if you will, of both P and Z and BOA.
Well, the easiest way is you would just get rid of the Board of Adjustment. And the ordinance would simply say, the planning board shall serve as the planning board and the Board of Adjustment.
And Gary, you know, we used to do that.
You know, you said that in email, I
Yeah,
didn't remember.
yeah,
That
we
just
did.
could
Oh,
be
yeah,
like
yeah.
brainstorms.
When I first retired and came back home, that's how I started on P and Z. And, that's when we were doing it. Wes Edmondson was on at the time. Wes will probably remember. And some others, but, that's what we did. P and Z was the B of A. Because I used to make the comment, I feel like Andy Griffith's show, where, you know, he's a sheriff, he arrests him, and then he turns, you know, the little plaque around on his desk where he's just as a piece and he tries him. You know, and that was my little
Yeah,
joke.
we had it all in one meeting at that time.
Excuse me?
We had it all in one meeting. We had the 7 o'clock meeting, we had planning and zoning, and then they went
Yep.
into, just like we go into closed session, they
Yep.
went into
Right.
Board of Adjustment and
right.
came back out of Board of Adjustment and then
Yep.
adjourned.
Now, you know, I think after several years, then that was
Mhm.
changed to what we've got now, but, that's, when I first came home, that would have been, what, 2010, I guess. That's the way it's set up. P and Z was BOA, and BOA was P and Z, however you wanna say it.
But I think your comment around having a new board, if you will, that's gonna take on new responsibilities, gives everybody an opportunity to say, yeah, I wanna take on these new responsibilities or not.
Yes, sir.
I see and I hear what the positive effect is. I mean, so could Gary or Doug, tell us what the negative effect would be, combining the boards? I mean, there has to, I mean, I'm not saying there has to be, but is there a negative effect?
Well,
I'm sure it's not all positive.
Linda would probably answer that the best, because she's been in a town where they did it.
I think sometimes logistics of it, you know, making sure it's advertised correctly. If you do have a BOA meeting, sometimes there's a gap between the two, that's really the biggest negative. In terms of hearings, in terms of the way the meetings operate and function, I did not experience personally any negatives, but that's something you just have to make sure you get right.
But again, the way I was led to believe, P and Z could approve something, okay, that it wouldn't go back to council, it would just go directly, and where planning and zoning, okay, has to go back to council. Like you explained that, not to discuss that matter, but on the corner there, where you told me P and Z could make that decision, and that's it. You know what I'm talking about, sir?
Certain things come up that are under planning and zoning purview, and all they are is a recommendation source. And they hear it, they make a recommendation, they are not quasi-judicial. The Board of Adjustments is quasi-judicial, and they make a decision, unless there's an appeal, it's done. It does not come before town council to say you agree or you disagree. So there are certain things, depending on what it is, that P and Z has no authority to make the final decision. But Board of Adjustment certainly does, because the way it's set up by statute.
And that's what I meant, P and Z, you know, doesn't make the final decision, but they would render an advisory decision.
Correct.
And then town approves it, and then the applicant later comes back and says, well, I want to get a variance here. And that may be, for or against what, the planning and zoning had recommended the council to begin with. That's why I was saying, the Andy Griffith show,
Right.
twisting it,
And
that sort of thing. And that was,
And that exact scenario is one of the negatives that I was gonna bring up, other than the communications of meetings. If for some reason this board, planning and zoning denied it as a recommendation, or if they denied one, and then town council decided we approve, and then it comes back because they need some type of an adjustment, now you're going back to the same groove that's already been overrode. So, to me, that can be a negative at times, that if you're coming back to them again, are they gonna be as inclined to help you after they've already denied your project? To me, that absolutely could be a negative.
But B of A should be focused on the letter of the law, if you will. Whereas planning and zoning can be a little bit, it's more legislative, if you will, so they can make a decision based on how they present it. What I would hope is, if we did this, that they can wear both hats. So if you gotta make a quasi-judicial decision, that should be based on either the UDO, or it's based on, I don't know, what else can be based on? Governance, right.
And the findings of facts.
I give you a was it 4 or 5
There's,
findings?
there's
Right.
4 that
Yes,
are.
that's what I was looking for. It's gotta be based on findings of fact. Can't be how they feel about it. So I think that's where you can try to address that concern. It definitely is a negative. But again, I think that's why you also need to have, if you take a combined board, they need to be trained and informed about, what the new duties and responsibilities are. So it's not just handing them the keys and say, hey, drive the car away. There needs to be some tutorial here on what's now your new responsibilities.
And I was gonna say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
My additional concern is that quasi-judicial is similar to you all in your elected capacities. When you have a meeting, there's certain rules that have to be followed. You don't get to say opinionated things, nor is the people testifying allowed to present opinionated things. It has to be fact, it has to be based upon whatever. Now, you can have 2 or 3 experts, and that's sometimes happens very frequently. But in the decorum that we've had and the difference in the 2 meetings, that's a concern of mine. It don't mean, as the mayor said, that with appropriate training and appropriate people, it would be fine. However, since last year that you all gave us the direction, we came out with the ethics and all of these, we have asked people to participate in training. I think 2 is all, from the planning and zoning board, that said they would be interested in training. So the old saying is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. If there's gonna be this difference of responsibility that poses the town a liability risk, to me, that's certainly a factor you want to consider in who you put to the positions.
I would agree with that. They're completely different meetings, completely different styles of meetings. I think negative-wise, I think probably day-to-day, it would just be they would require more supervision. Like you said, more training, more supervision. Let's be sure we got the same, the right numbers of in-town versus out-of-town. Let's be sure we know where we're at and how we can conduct this meeting. But what a more immediate potential negative, I guess, is all of this has come about because we have a lack of engagement, right? We're having trouble filling these spots. The last thing that I would want to do is create a scenario where we're taking the group that we do have that are engaged and chasing some of them off. And so I don't have an answer for that, but that would be my concern, is that we end up with 2 from this board and 3 from this board that are now out of a seat. They've been with us for X amount of years and done a great job, but now we say we don't have a place for you. I would not want that to happen. So I don't know if is it possible to convolute it even more? Maybe just to have a pool Or does it need to be, it's gotta be by the number of P and Z seats?
Well,
It seems to be that was what typically dictates it, right, is your number of P and Z seats.
Well, when you say a pool, I'm not sure what you mean, because, I mean, it sounds to me like you're still going back to BOA. When your pool is, if you decide to go that way, your pool is your planning and zoning board, because you're not using all of them. And one of the things I want to tell you about is a clearly delineated process. You know, Davidson, for instance, they had their planning board meeting and they adjourned. People got up and left. And then 30 minutes later, they called the Board of Adjustment. So it was a clearly delineated process. And I haven't so far seen any problem with that in Davidson. Well, I add one other wrinkle to it, and is that y'all can be the VOA. There's nothing against, that doesn't say that. Planning board, there's no requirement to have a planning board. There's no requirement to have a board of adjustment. You've got to have a board of adjustment at some point because, well, you don't really have to, because y'all can serve as any quasi-judicial decision. But both of them, under the statutes, you may have these boards.
Sorry, Lynn, did you say that where you were, that they were the same people?
Yes. We did it both ways. When I first went there, it was 2 separate boards, and they combined them for this very same reason, that they were having a problem getting enough people to serve on the BOA. So we did combine those 2, and it was just as Gary said, where it was the planning board, and we did exactly what he said, where we kept the planning board members as the BOA members, and they would, for the same night, they would open the planning board hearing or meeting, hold that meeting, close that meeting, open the BOA hearing, hear that meeting. So it was 2 very separate meetings. So it was like the agendas were separate. But there, I agree with the mayor, there would be a lot of training needed, because planning board is very used to doing legislative hearings where they can say whatever they want, they can ask whatever they want, they can condition, you know, and in variance, quasi-judicial things, you just can't. It has to be based on facts, and those findings that are set out by statute. So that's probably a good point that the mayor and the manager made, that's something that I think the current planning board would need a lot of training on.
And just for
Well,
reference,
here in this town, what we just witnessed, we had numerous, matter of fact, too many people want to apply for planning and zoning, and we didn't have enough for BOA. So, again, I need a little, like, education. What, like, we got numerous people that want to be on planning and zoning, but nobody, like George doesn't want to apply for BOA. So what could we do to attract the BOA board? I mean,
well,
statute says you can compensate.
oh.
the
Then if we compensate the BOA, then P and Z is gonna.
I'm not suggesting those.
Right, no, I hear you, see.
the reality is P and Z's in the press, and you got a lot of people that are commented and referred to in the press. Board of Adjustments meeting or not. You've got certain people, whether we acknowledge it or not, the fact is that disagrees with the town's growth plan and or wants positions on the P and Z so that they can make a difference one way or the other. The Board of Adjustment is by rule of law, and it is based off of facts, and you put people that have to follow those 4 criteria, it either fits or it don't. So when you look and witness a lot of our planning and zoning boards, it goes back to people saying a lot of things that they're allowed to say because of the type board it is, but when you go to a Board of Adjustments, it requires effort. You can't just come in and do these things. I'm certainly not criticizing anybody that is serving on either board. I'm just saying, as Councilman Oxer said, they are clearly 2 different boards. The commentary, the behavior is entirely different night and day of the 2 different boards now. And when you have people to want to serve on Board of Adjustments, I think when we asked
Jerry was on-
Councilman Oxer initially, it's kinda like, okay. But then once he got there, he's like, hey, I really like this, it's structured, it tells you what you gotta do, it tells you what not. But again, they're not being quoted in the paper, they're not going to social media making comments, their family members are not going to social media making comments. On the planning and zoning board, it's like 90% of them do that. No rules, no consequences.
I feel it prepared me better for this position than planning and zoning would have. That's just an opinion.
Well, Board of Adjustment is not as sexy. I'm gonna put that, it's not as sexy as planning and zoning. Planning and zoning is sexy, it's flashy, it's gadgets, it's bells and whistles. The B of A is boring, it's like you say, it's per the rules, per the law. You sit there, there's certain things you can say, there's certain things you can't say, and that's not sexy. That's not fun.
And when a lot
I
of
don't know how
people,
else to put it.
when a lot of people have to follow rules, all of a sudden their comfort zone is not public anymore.
So that I'm clear on this, P and Z has 7 voting members, BOA has 5. Both of them have 2 alternates. So either way you go, you're gonna end up with, a P and Z meeting where you've got 2 alternates, or a BOA meeting where you have potentially 4. You stay with the 7, the number of 7. You follow me on that?
I'm sorry.
So, P and Z, we currently have 7 voting members
Yes. 2 alternates.
and 2 alternates. B of A, we have 5 and 2 alternates. If we stay with the number 7, which I think is why I recommended, you have 7 for P and Z meetings still, and 2 alternates. And you have, on a B of A, you have 5 and 4 alternates, which is your pool you were asking about to a certain extent.
Right.
Okay.
To a certain extent.
Now, you know, P and Z, you need a simple majority. Board of Adjustment, 4/5.
Yeah,
Pass.
you're still gonna have 5 voting members on B of A, and
Mhm.
7 you're still gonna be required for P and Z.
And you can always do the membership by date of appointment, like the 5 oldest standing P and Z members service the BOA, unless you wanna rotate, that's one way of doing it. And then the other 4, as you said, would be alternates.
End result, I do like the idea of having more alternates available for BOA, because I was never a seated member of BOA, but I voted every meeting. I was an alternate. I think the attendance is hard to come by.
Well, you know, if you think about it, planning and zoning can be overruled by council. They can recommend something and council can go 180-degree difference. Board of Adjustment, you've got to go to Superior Court. That puts you in a more important position, a more serious position, and as the town manager said, a liable position. You know, you're in harm's way a little bit there, what you do and say. You're representing the town. So, you know, that's a much more important position, but again, it's not as flashy.
One other option might be to, and I was thinking about this when you made the comment about how you always were a voting member when you were on the BOA, is that board meets during the day. I think it's at 3 o'clock, 3:30.
Yeah.
And that might be a reason why we don't get as much interest in that board, as a lot of people work at that time.
You know, as Gary says, you know, we can have board members, you know, council members on there. I would not mind, I mean, I've been there before,
Or moving
so I'm
the
not
meeting.
scared of it. I would mind, you know, being an alternate there to where, because I can be there during the day.
Just a correction, y'all cannot serve on the Board of Adjustments. That's against the
I
statute.
understood you say we
If you have a
could.
separate board of adjustment, you can otherwise, council can be the board of adjustment.
Oh, can be, but we can't.
You can take the
Single.
place, you can take the place of a Board of Adjustments.
Okay,
Not here in the cases.
all right
But
then.
you cannot serve on the Board of
When I heard
Adjustments.
that, I thought maybe singularly we could,
Thought the same.
suppose taking the place of.
But my thought was
Okay.
maybe you move the meeting to 6 PM. I mean, that might generate more interest in people serving on that board.
Why not just even later, why not 7? And then maybe we could revisit this issue. I mean, why don't we make it more appealing to someone to wanna be on the BOA? I mean, a meeting at 7 o'clock in the evening, whether it be a Tuesday or a Wednesday or whatnot, as long as it's not a Friday or a Saturday, I think would be a lot more appealing to get somebody to do it. I think, this is my opinion again, let's try and do something else before we go to this extreme, combining both boards.
I'd like to know what the current members have to say about it as well. I mean, because if we put it out and if everyone, it's not gonna happen, but if every last one of them said, no, I want nothing to do with that, maybe we ought to not do it.
Well, right now, you got nobody applying. I mean, you've got 2 vacant positions, alternates, 2 vacants. I mean, you got nobody applying. I mean, that was a comment, I was at the last B of A, just as an interested listener, and, you know, we were sitting there brainstorming, what do we do? And when you've got nobody applying, and everybody wanted to do P and Z, but nobody applying for B of A. Now, as Eddie said, perhaps moving the time from 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon till 7 in the evening, you may make a difference, and I'd be willing to give that a shot, before we do, go the more drastic route. But right now, again, we can ask. I know there were the 2 members that didn't show up. One, I didn't know why, Kenny was not able to, but then you had Miss Byers, wasn't it?
Byers.
Yeah, Miss Byers, yeah, and she had a business situation or something, I think, that prevented her. Well, maybe if it had been a 7 at night, she could have been here. But again, it's just a lack of interest, I think, is the biggest situation. And perhaps moving it to 7 will stir a little interest, but people are not even applying.
And I agree with, I think it's more that lack of interest. I won't use your commentary, describing it, but maybe a little bit of lack of interest. The only thing I would add, Eddie, is it also puts a little pressure on staff, right? So they're already scheduled to be here late at night for certain meetings and trying to rotate, which is probably why we had it earlier. I'm not speaking for them, but again, you're trying to manage a little bit of their staff time as well. So just give you a little bit of flavor for that.
And to add to what you just said, Mr. Mayor, the reason that it was years ago, even when I got to the board, that was the time, and I too offered back then to suggest change the time, because one member was constantly not there, and honestly, I think they just forgot it. If truth be told, I think they forgot it. But then there was always an excuse that there's business or something that's going on. But the reason they chose that time, and I'm not saying that it couldn't be or shouldn't be changed, the only reason they did, adding to what the mayor said about extra to us as staff, but a lot of times when you're using these quasi-judicial, they're represented by attorneys and have legal people or experts testifying at times on their behalf. Even though some of these can be real simple to handle, they still have an attorney or somebody from the bar representing them. So the thought process was to keep it during the business workday so that they could show up and during normal hours. But again, if they're hired and they understand that this is when our board meets, that's part of the conditions. I'm sure, as Gary said himself, when he's going to Davidson, it's not at 3 o'clock.
But if you want to change the time, one thing just to think about is maybe change it to 5. That way staff doesn't have to go home and come back. And it's slightly out of the regular workday time. Maybe, and that's when Davidson starts there, they start their P and Z at 5 o'clock.
I don't want us to lose focus. I think it makes it more efficient. It sounds like Davidson, I'm sure they've got probably a handful more projects than we do, but I don't want to overuse our volunteers either. And so if there's an opportunity to try to make it more efficient and effective, I kind of like the idea of, looking at it. But maybe there's a, step in between making that move. And I'd like the, 5 o'clock, it's still, you know, moving it up a little bit to ensure that, folks aren't here for, you know, 10, 12 hours, you know, a day.
Will the staff that would have to be here, are they in a position to be able to get comp time, or they're not?
They are, however, my directive is adjust your time accordingly. We can get lost real quick in comp time and overtime, and once staff earns it, then we're asking a lot of them. But to answer your question, yes,
Right.
they would either get comp time or overtime, but just in the short time Lynn has been here, she wound up over 100 hours, and I'm like, no, we can't do that.
But
So,
also, the day of the BOA, Lynn could come in and start her tour at 12 o'clock, couldn't she?
yes,
Is the same staff that has to be here at the P and Z, the same staff has to be at the BOA?
yes.
So if it was held at like 6 o'clock on the same day as P and Z, would that have less of an impact? Because they said it's usually short meetings, right?
Assuming they are normal meetings, it would be less of an impact as far as coming back or staying. But that is part, to answer what you're saying. If our workday is over at 5 o'clock and we're not starting a meeting until 6 or 7, then we've got employees to drive home or go eat dinner and still have an extra hour or whatever, and then have to come back up. 6 o'clock certainly fits better, because if you had time from the workday, you would have time for a sandwich. But we usually are in here a half hour before meetings to make sure that the room's set up, everybody's ready. So that would certainly make more sense, and we're cognizant of that fact as far as our suggestion goes. But that's one of those, if there was business there, then yes, we could adjust the schedule, say come in on these days, this time, to try to keep from the comp time or overtime being there. Because even though it sounds simple to say, just give them the time, that has a good budget implication, because we eventually gotta pay for it.
Right.
Whether it's time away from work, or whether it earned at time and a half, or whether it's adjust your workday so that you're not earning comp time or overtime.
So, I forgot what I was gonna ask. So it's never, the BOA or the BOA meeting has never been later in the day, from what you're saying? It's always been earlier in the day? So we've never tried that, what Eddie was talking about?
Not since when I served, I think I was the second chairman, I might have been the third, after what Mayor Pro Tem is saying, that they made them separate. And that was our time then, and I was basically told that's the way it is.
I think the current board, there was a poll. I think there was a poll of the board members asking them when would be a good time.
Oh,
That's a
I'm not a-
good answer.
I'm not familiar with the poll being taken, if there was. Nobody ran it by me.
I mean, it was just at a meeting. What's a good time to do this?
and obviously.
I mean, those are the people that are doing the work for us now, so why don't we ask them, hey, what would be a good optimum time for you guys to meet? Would make everybody happy.
I think the issue is the folks who are there, it's a good time.
But the ones who aren't there, was it, because it looked like me, 6 PM, I work in Charlotte, so 6 PM would be a better time. Maybe you have somebody who's in the same situation where that would be better for them, but they don't sign up because it's at 3:30.
Well, even when I was on BOA, that was a problem. Like, I hope traffic getting bad, but we're not hitting quorum. So, you know,
Does it
It's a
have to
factor.
be on the same, let's see, I'm naive, whatever. Does it have to be on the same day every month, or could it?
It used to not be. It used to only be scheduled as needed, but to have some consistency with the board members that was there, we did. I asked at the meeting, would you all like to set a particular day of the week and then a particular week of the month, so that this is consistent? This way you can mark your calendar for the whole year. I may have a meeting that day. And then if it don't have, as soon as we know that month that there's not one, we let them know that it's canceled. But I did poll them and ask, and we did it in an open meeting, are you all comfortable? That way, one, we as a town were criticized from the public. They didn't know when these meetings were. They were wishy-washy back and forth. Well, we published them all. Here's the meetings, here's the calendar. And we let them choose, then when they wanted to do that. We didn't tell them what to do.
Cause I was calling each member separately, individually. What times can you make on this day? Or this day, or this day, you know?
And there's also posting in the paper and so forth, I would presume.
You don't have to
Since they're-
post in a paper anymore, right?
Since they're not,
Right.
Board of Adjustments, you don't have to post in the paper, but you did have to post in
Post it
others.
on the board,
Okay.
and the website.
Okay.
Email notices for BOA.
just post out here is all we have to do.
Yeah.
And the close property people.
I'm sorry, to what?
Yeah, you
what'd you say?
adjacent.
And the adjacent property that's affected.
So further direction, you wanna give staff, on this topic?
I like the idea of moving the time, but that's not gonna, I just feel like that's not gonna get us two more alternates and solve our problem. Right, unless I'm off base, I know we've kind of turned a few corners during this conversation, but right, I mean, that's the core issue, right, is that we've got alternate seats on the BOA that have not been filled, and we don't see them being filled on the horizon, right? We don't have prospects in the pipeline, and so on and so forth. P&Z, we got them coming out of our nose, right, applications. Is this,
We got people we didn't approve.
There's one Board of Adjustment application that did not get reviewed last year at my recommendation instead of bringing it before you all. However, at this time, we have no applications. They could be coming again, and whether we have them or not, to answer your question, there's not been an influx. But even back to you all's point, we had a lot of people apply for planning and zoning. Once we asked them to show up and be interviewed, one did show up one day, but then took their name out, and the other one never showed up but complained.
And yet again, if they have to do the board adjustment role, it might thin out that group, get more qualified, you know.
Yes, sir.
More be in both of them,
Yes, sir.
be a different group.
yeah, because P&Z isn't our problem here, right? Right, our problem, where all of this is stemmed from the BOA. So,
My hang-up is, you're gonna be
They're at
dealing
7.
with the same people that are on P and Z on BOA. I know we're looking for two, but I like a separate BOA and I like a separate P and Z.
The only thing I'll add to that, Councilman, now is, I commented in a worst-case scenario of that they may have to come back to BOA, but that is very rare. I don't know that we've had a case in the last year or two that somebody went before planning and zoning, then they come back and had to go before I take that back, yes, we have.
It's Speedway.
Yeah,
They get a
Speedway
special
did
use
that.
permit. Yeah.
Speedway was one that did recently.
That's only my opinion.
I like what Eddie, what you were saying. I'm with Eddie. I think we should maybe try to move the time. Planning and zoning is getting names out the behind. They're at 7 o'clock. We can try it. If it doesn't work, we'll come back to visit. I mean, that's my opinion. So everybody else.
when does a
Okay.
potential
Jerry
applicant
said
find
earlier.
out that the meeting is at 3 o'clock? For me, it didn't matter, because I'm self-employed. I didn't care if you met at 7:30 in the morning, I was going to be on the board. You know, so not everybody has that flexibility.
So
If
then
they
I know.
research now, since last, was it summer that we did that, Ken? Or spring of last year?
Did what, I'm sorry?
Posted when their meetings was. I want to say it was spring of last year. It's when we noticed, we published that based off of what the Board of Adjustment members themselves decided calendar-wise. But to answer your question, if they look, then they know that's when it is. Otherwise, they wouldn't know unless they're appointed and then they're told, like,
So then that tells me the
which is
time's
the way
not-
you and I found out.
Well, you don't know though, because I asked because that's important to me,
Mhm.
or I go and look on the website.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I didn't fall into that category,
Because
so
you
that's why.
don't care, because you self-employed, right? And
I-
that is
yeah,
me,
I
because
care.
I'm not. Yeah.
Passion?
No passion, no passion.
But no, to your point, exactly that. I didn't, for me, for my schedule, I didn't care. I wanted to get involved. I don't care when you meet, I'll make the time. Not everybody has that
Right,
flexibility.
exactly.
So that's why I was like, when do they find out that's at 3:30? Because if you were coming and saying, hey, look, we've had 3 people come in the past month interested in BOA, and they hit the bricks when they found out it was 3 o'clock. But I don't think that's happening.
No.
Right, and it's not on that page, right? It's not on the application, right? So it's probably gonna be, hey, look, we're gonna bring you in the council meeting and interview, you know, and that's probably when people are finding, but that's not it.
But
So I
what's it
mean,
gonna hurt us to do our due diligence if we try it by moving it, before we go, like Eddie was saying, before we go this drastic measure, can we do a few things to try it? Then if it doesn't prove to be unfruitful,
There was a reason it was pulled apart years ago, and that was the reason that Eddie specifies. So,
no comment.
Let's keep it moving. Mr. Harris, anything different than,
I'm just gonna add that Jerry's point earlier on, that we move that time, we may lose existing board members.
I was getting ready to reiterate
And
that.
that would be a problem. Then now you got twice the cost, so I mean, maybe polling them to see what happens.
right.
And we could all, I apologize.
anything different?
no, not what I'm going to say.
45 minutes on this, anything different? Mr. Young? What I heard, at least what I've heard, is maybe we give this an opportunity to poll the current BOA. I almost feel like you need to poll both boards on the idea, but BOA specific on the timing part. And if they're willing, current board willing to move to 6, at least what I heard, then maybe we look at the option of moving it to 6 to see if we get more interest.
If it meets you all's approval, I suggest that we talk to the BOA first.
Yeah.
And see if they're willing to move a time frame or have a preferred time frame in the evening that works. If they are, let's try that and see if that, because I do agree with Council Lady Harris. Some people look and I'm just not bothered, but if it's posted and we can get the word out, then that may draw some interest in. And now that we've had the discussion, I'm sure the news will have it out there also that this board is, and I'm not putting down on planning and zoning, but I agree with Mayor Pro Tem, this board is more important in that it's a final say and it's quasi judicial. But if that's all right with you all, we'll do that first, and if for some reason that falls short, then we'll poll the other board to see what both of them are. Is that satisfactory?
Sounds good.
And no respect to any other boards that we have, but I see it every day at where I work, okay? People like to be appreciated. We need to pump up the people that work for us for nothing. And hey, we appreciate the job you're doing, and you're so important. I think that's, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to get on a platform here, but since COVID came, I don't think we should, and I'm not talking as Troutman Town Council, okay? There is not enough appreciation shown to the people that are doing the jobs now. I mean, I think we, not just the BOA, but we need to let everybody know that we appreciate what they're doing.
All right.
Thank you for that robust conversation. Agenda?
Call to order and the normal business is item 1 and item 2 is consent agenda items, minutes, closed session minutes, special meeting minutes, approval of closed session minutes, regular minutes meeting September 8th, and then 6 is a annexation request of Shen Farms, application John Shen, 149.17 acres. and Withers Creek Road, applicant Robert Shin. Total acreage is 276.26. And this is for a resolution to direct the clerk to investigate a petition received. Approval certificate of sufficiency adoption resolution. The public hearing date would be set for Marine Corps birthday, November 10th. 7, approval of a facade for Dollar General on 1060 Charlotte Highway. That would be a new one to be constructed, just to make sure everyone knows. 8, approval of Troutman Mobility Plan and agreement for professional services. That's what Andrew spoke about earlier. Number 9, budget amendment for police department, capital outlay police vehicles. Chief Watson is here. Chief, you wish to comment?
When I first started, prior to me being hired, you guys hired me as chief manager, the budget had approved for last year's budget, purchase of 2 Ford F-150 responder vehicles. We were told, hey, we're shutting down production of that, you're not getting them. So the order was canceled. We were told that they would contact us when there was a reorder done, or open back up, never heard from them. So then when we came time for budget for this year, we asked for money to buy 3 Dodge Chargers. So far, we've purchased 2 of those, which we ended up having to buy 2 that are, going to be unmarked because the car scheme didn't match, due to shutting down the Dodge Charger production line. But we were contacted and told that, our vehicles we're going to begin being assembled this month for the 2 Ford F-150s. With the money left in our vehicle budget, we're going to need to request additional funds to be able to purchase these 2 trucks and outfit them. Since our vehicle budget was done during the budgeting process, the price of equipment has gone up on average 30 to 40% per item. So it's been a significant increase where we're having to go back and buy things for these Ford F-150s. If anybody has any questions, I can answer them.
Chief Watson, so the capital outlay is listed here on vehicles, 66, that is for the Dodge Chargers.
No, that would be the additional, the 66,296 would be to pay for the 2 Ford F-150s.
Those are for the Ford F-150.
That's the additional charges, right, Chief?
Excuse me, sir?
That's the additional.
Yeah,
above and
in
beyond
addition to the 2
price of
Chargers.
the 2 Dodge
Yeah,
Chargers.
so instead of getting 3 Chargers this year, we'd actually end up getting
Get 2 pickups.
2 Chargers and 2 trucks. Because they were ordered and we now have VINs assigned, which we thought.
Talking 2 charges, 2 pickups, I believe I heard you say.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So the rollover unused funds, the 18 is.
We would need the 66,296 with after the rollover from the unused funds from last year.
So it's 18 plus the 66.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Give you enough to do the equipping them and everything.
Yes, that would fully equip them. Currently, right now, we're in a situation where if any of our cars start having serious problems, we're gonna have to keep fixing them because of the delays in getting vehicles. And it looks like next year may be more difficult too. So if the board would approve for those 2 vehicles, we would really appreciate it. Would help our situation.
Just let me ask you, the fact that the 2 pickups were delayed, are we being penalized for that by the manufacturer in the form of a higher price now?
No,
for those trucks?
the cost only changed. It was like about $1,000 in the cost.
Per truck?
For these, yes.
It'll be 2023.
Yep, they will be 2022 Chargers, F-150s trucks. They're not 2023s.
And Justin, this would be no problem with the budget?
Correct, yes, it'll be fine.
And we won't get our house broken by them,
No,
Chief?
no, they have assigned the VINs. We have the VINs for both of the trucks will be manufactured. The manufacturer start date is October 24th, so they should be here by the end of November or December.
What about the Chargers? When do you expect
We've,
them?
we've got one Charger, the white one that I'm driving right now.
Okay.
It's already on the road. And then we have a black one that's gonna be assigned to a patrol sergeant. And it is actually being outfitted now. We're just waiting on some of the parts to get in, which should be in this month.
Okay. Those are the Chargers
Yes,
and the F-150s?
they would be here probably the end of November, first of December.
What will their application be?
They're gonna be on patrol. They're gonna be marked, fully marked and decaled.
Assuming these four-door?
Yes, four-door, they'll have transport, partition for a cage to transport criminals.
Just forgive me, I hadn't seen too many
Yeah, there's
pickup.
been a few of them.
We actually brought them out here. Was it Davidson or Cornelius?
Cornelius had
Cornelius
them.
brought them out here for us to take a look at.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so we physically see what they can look like.
Yeah,
Okay.
You said you were waiting on parts for the other Charger, you
Yes.
mean like equipment?
yes, just, just to outfit it as a full patrol car would transport them prisoners and everything. But that should be here pretty soon.
So forgive me for being a stickler. Sorry, Mayor. Yeah, so the 66,296, the balance that you still need after the rollover, the 18.9.
Yes.
And Justin, you said that's okay with the budget. Where's that coming from?
So the 18 comes from last year's
That's
budget,
rollover,
which
right.
was unused. Now the 66,000, it'll come out of fund balance, basically from previous years. So once the audit is complete, we'll see how much we had contributing in fund balance, what we had left over from last year. But
And we got our rainy days, right? I mean,
Correct.
that's probably another, 'cause I know we had a big debate about the budgets.
Right.
I'm like, wait, why is this much going? And you were like,
Right. right,
we need that there,
Yes.
right? And so I think that maybe might be one of these instances.
correct.
Okay, sorry, just trying to
Well,
learn on the fly here.
well, to help clarify, if the money was not used, it would go into the rainy day.
Correct.
It being used, we're not taking anything out of what we intended on putting in rainy day. It's
Right.
rollovers from previous years,
That's, yeah,
just to help explain.
yeah, that's what I was wondering, like, what's being, then I was like, wait,
Right.
both of y'all pointed out, wait, no, this is how we do it, right? So, okay.
But that 66 will come out, obviously, from current fund balance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
But and just to reiterate, and I apologize, Mayor Pro Tim and I had a good check on something. But, to reiterate what Chief Watson said and what I said earlier, these vehicles is an integral part, and I missed part of his presentation, so if I say something he already repeated, I apologize, but, or already said. And us trying to order vehicles that would normally be, hey, come place your order, and 2 to 4 months you have your vehicle, those times don't exist anymore. And to me, we are very fortunate not to have major breakdowns to total loss of vehicle as far as its repair goes, because even getting parts for some vehicles is almost as bad as ordering a new one, so I definitely think it's worthwhile. Did you all have any other questions about that? The number 10 is the J. Hoyt Hayes Memorial Standing Library Quarterly Report. That will be what she presents, but just a little sidebar there. And again, to put something on you all's radar for the future, we had some communications about what was in the budget or not. They was expecting funds that was not there. Simply, it was not budgeted for. Justin and I did meet with the county library manager and the local branch manager, and we explained, hey, this is the process. They will be coming forward this coming budget cycle to ask for funding to be put back in there. They acknowledge the fact that our ABC board is donating them a significant quantity of money as they have profits. You all, and we explained that, which they did know, that you all as a council decides to earmark money. And at least in my opinion, based off of my memory, we were under the impression that this money would take the place of what the town had been funding. That message, for whatever practicality, was not relayed to them. And they were kind of expecting both. And I said, both? And what they are doing and have done is for some time They have wanted a meeting room and an expansion to the library. And just to reiterate to you all, we own the building and the property. The county provides the staff and the inventory and the maintenance. Now, we have a small amount annually that we have to take care of, but beyond that, they do it all. And and the use of the library and from some different programs and community requests that they've had, and there might even be situations depending on what size this addition was made, it certainly could be a benefit to our community and an enhancement to the library that they have, is to do an addition to the side of it that would have its own access. That way, if the library was closed, people would ahead of time sign up and register, but they could come and use that building for whatever. Well, if it was one of our civic groups that wanted to have a meeting and have a place to go, they certainly could do it there. If it was other activities or meetings where you need 40, 50 people, the room would be there for them to utilize. Certainly was impressed with the plan that she had laid out and presented to us, and they had been taking that ABC money and putting it into an account to save up for the possibility of building this expansion. So I did ask her to plan on speaking more to that. We have also asked a couple different people's input so that we can kind of, hey, just ballpark, because it's not there yet. I'm telling y'all up front, the money's not there yet to proceed with a plan of building, but knowing what they are trying to do in the future, and at least at this time, what the projected costs are or will be, then we'll have some knowledge of what's going on, and we'll have a better understanding of why they're asking us to continue funding the way they have been. So do plan on hearing more about that as we have the workshops and the retreats. Do y'all have any questions about that? Justin, did I skip anything?
Is it, maybe it's different here in North Carolina, but usually additions and expansions of public libraries usually come from private sources.
Sometimes they do. Not, it hasn't been the case here. And with the county library system we have, the town of Harmony, the town of Troutman, and the town of Mooresville all have libraries. Statesville does not. The county has a library in the city of Statesville. They don't fund their library that we are aware of. Mooresville did, to your point, they had a very active, ours here is called Friends of the Library. And Mooresville had something similar, and some people were very active and raised a lot of these funds, which were then matched by the town of Mooresville, and then they did their additions and their upgrades. So yes, what you're saying a lot of times absolutely is the case, but that depends on that nonprofit group that's usually associated with that particular library. At least historically, that's the way it has been here. Even when Harmony built the library up there, it was a group of people, to your point, that come in and volunteered and donated in kind and like things to make it happen.
That's how my alma mater ended up with the Al Gore Library.
Great.
He didn't go to my school, but he paid for it. So, right, so that's just, yeah, that's what I'm used to growing up. That's what I was used to saying. That named after people, and most of the time those were the main donors and things like that.
That's exactly why the name of this library is J. Hoyt Hayes Memorial.
Right.
The largest benefactor was family of him.
Perfect, okay.
The next is Fire Chief Weston Morris will be here to give a quarterly report. ABC also will have its quarterly report to tell us an outstanding record year we had. And of course, public comments for Section 4. Section 5, new business. There will be an annexation request. Applicants Red Maple Resources, it's 1.17 acres down at the corner of Barkdale and Main Street. Number 14, rezoning request Red Maple, Robert Davis. One was annexation, the other one's rezoning. Number 15, annexation request non-contiguous, Dorothy Collins, River Rock and Perth Road. Is the project name 28.3 acres. And then the rezoning request of that same property is number 16. I'll be happy to answer any questions you all have.
Any questions on the agenda for Thursday?
Is River Rock ETJ?
No.
Okay. Other questions?
I guess one question, you made the comment on the Dollar General, you know, in the consent agreement, then you made some comments there about it. But I looked at it as a warehouse, actually not a store like this one, right?
No, it's a store that they're proposing to build.
Yes.
It's a store.
Okay, when I went through back there, I picked up the distribution center.
I don't know if we put something in there in error that would allude to that, but it's actually, I don't think they're planning on having two Dollar General stores, but what we was told, and not from this applicant, was that Dollar General is looking at the new location and moving their business there and vacating the one they're currently in.
Yeah, I was thinking that was more like a distribution. When I read it in there, it said something about a distribution.
It is an actual
It's an actual
store.
store, okay.
Yes, sir. They had come previously before Board of Adjustments for a variance to have in-front parking, and that was denied. And then they have submitted plans that is now in compliance with our UDO, but they still have some facade changes that they wish to make. Lynn, do you want to speak more to those at this time, or you prefer to wait?
They're just the facade that was approved by the BOA. So what's in your packet, excuse me, is what the Design Review Board approved. I believe it's a building, it's gonna be, I think it's cement siding, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just, it looks like the pictures in your packet. The rear of the building is where they'll be doing, you know, they'll be making deliveries, trucks will be dropping off materials there. And it's got sort of an angled side entry to the front. But as the manager stated, they did want to put parking to the front of that building, which is something that our ordinance allows the DRB to decide on, and the DRB turned them down. So they did go back to the drawing board and presented plans to staff that shows compliance with our current UDO. So it's in your packet is the elevations that the Design Review Board approved after the applicant presented those to them.
I appreciate Lynn correcting me very politely. I said Board of Adjustments, it was not. It was Design Review Board that they were denied and then got approval. But to my comments that's in there, again, I understand that that's what is approved, but I'm just asking you all to look as you go by and make your own decisions. That cement stuff is what this other one's constructed of, and I don't even remember how many years this one's been put up, but I'm thinking it's somewhere in 15, 17-year range.
At least, yeah.
Had somebody drive through there, haven't we?
Sir?
Yeah, and they made a drive-in out of it.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Oh, yeah.
Mayor, I have an update for y'all.
Yes.
We've talked about a federal lawsuit, Iredell Water Corporation versus City of Statesville. The court ruled on that week before last. I just found out last week. It was a mixed bag. There were basically three things that were asking the court to rule on. One was whether or not to add necessary parties like us. The court denied that, said we just didn't have enough information. Second was to completely dismiss because of Iredell Water's charter language. That was denied. What was granted, which is actually maybe of some use to Troutman, was the court did rule that Iredell Water only had a 3-year statute of limitations, which means in the Statesville lawsuit, they only could go back to annexations that went back to 2018 as it relates to the proposed school property. That was annexed in 2008, so well beyond a 3-year statute of limitations. So that may serve Troutman decently because we clearly can claim that they don't have any claim on that because of the statute of limitations. Whether that will now go up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, who knows?
So wait and see.
That's your update.
I was just gonna ask, basically, what does this do to their claim of just about all of Iredell County almost, you know, for our discussion? Where it would negatively affect the various municipalities, Statesville, Morrisville?
It didn't really do anything at this point in time.
Yes, that's still up in the
That
air.
was the part about adding necessary parties, and the court just said the court said, court judge said he didn't feel like he had enough information.
So that part's still up in the air.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that and the school situation were the two that really concerned me.
Right.
You know, their area of jurisdiction, shall I say, and the school situation. Okay.
Anything else?
Not from staff.
Anything else for the good of the order?
Just to let folks know, I will not be here Thursday night. My wife's having surgery that day, and so I will be down in Charlotte, most likely still when you folks are starting here that evening. So I will not be here, and just to let you know why I won't be here.
What are we thinking of?
And our
Thank you.
thoughts and prayers will be with Rose and
Thank you.
yourself, and
Appreciate it.
if there's nothing else, then
And I won't be here Thursday.
at least you can give me the
You're up.
adjournment.
Huh?
Adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, no?